My parents made me work to pay rent while my younger sister got everything paid for, so I moved out quietly. And what I did next left them speechless and alone. Growing up, I learned pretty quickly that in our house, fairness was more of a suggestion than a rule. I'm 27 now, but this story really started when I was about 16. That was when the dynamic in our house shifted from slightly unfair to downright insulting. My parents always had this narrative that I was the responsible one, the independent one. I got decent grades, didn't party, and I worked part-time at the local grocery store to save for community college. My sister, Ashley, was 2 years younger, and she was the golden child. Blonde, bubbly, always had 10 different friends texting her at once. She played volleyball, had a new hobby every month, and whenever she didn't get her way, the whole house suffered. At first, I told myself it was just personality differences, that maybe they related to her more, that maybe I was just being overly sensitive. But then I turned 18. I got accepted into a state college and told my parents I wanted to move out and live on campus. It wasn't far, maybe an hour's drive, but I thought I'd earned that kind of independence. I'd been saving money from my shifts, even took on some weekend overtime. When I brought it up, my mom laughed. "Who's going to pay for that?" she asked, like I'd just announced I wanted to become an astronaut. I remember my dad looking at me over the rim of his glasses and saying, "You think you're too good for this house already?" I said no. I just wanted a chance to figure out my own life. That week, they told me if I was serious about being an adult, then I could start paying rent. For $100 a month. No discussion. I didn't fight it. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. I just kept working. I kept my grades up, took the commuter train every morning, and handed over a third of my paycheck each month. Meanwhile, Ashley got her license at 16. My parents bought her a used SUV the next week. When she wanted to join a travel volleyball team that cost $2,000 a season, they made it work. When she applied to a private university in California, they toured the campus with her and posted photos on Facebook like they were the proudest parents on earth. No one ever asked Ashley to pay rent. Not when she started working part-time at a boutique. Not when she got her degree in social media marketing and moved back home for a gap year to figure things out. She lived there rent-free. I was still paying them $400 a month even though I had already graduated and was working full-time as a junior developer. I didn't complain. Out loud, anyway. But I started to keep track. Little things. Like how Ashley borrowed my laptop and spilled wine on it. And my parents said, "She didn't mean to, let it go." Or the time she forgot to pay the electric bill. It was in my name because I was better with responsibility. And we had no power for a day. My parents barely blinked. Then came the tipping point. I was saving up to move out. I'd been quietly putting away every extra dollar for nearly 2 years. I finally had enough to cover first, last, and a deposit on a one-bedroom apartment a few towns over. I came home one evening, excited. I had the lease printed in my backpack. I figured I'd tell them over dinner, thank them for the years I'd stayed, and just make a clean exit. Instead, I walked in to find Ashley crying on the couch. My mom had her arm around her, saying, "It's okay, sweetie. We'll fix it." Ashley had maxed out 2 credit cards, one of which she'd opened in my name. That's how I found out my little sister had been committing fraud under my social security number. And my parents knew. I lost it. When I confronted her, she just shrugged and said, I was going to pay it back once I figured it out. My parents tried to minimize it. "She's young. It's just a mistake. You always handle things better anyway." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall, and something broke loose inside me. Not anger, not sadness, just a deep, numb clarity. I was never going to be treated fairly in that house. Not as long as I kept showing up, cleaning up, and paying rent like a second-class adult. They didn't see me as a son. They saw me as a backup plan. So the next morning, I left, quietly. I packed my things into my beat-up Honda, signed the lease, and texted my mom 2 hours later. "I've moved out. I need space. Please don't give Ashley access to my info again." No dramatic speech. No begging for understanding. Just a quiet exit from a life where I was never anything more than convenient. I didn't expect what happened next. It's funny how quickly the air feels different when you're finally breathing for yourself. The first morning in my new apartment, I woke up to quiet. No Ashley yelling at her phone. No passive-aggressive slamming of kitchen cabinets. No being asked if I could grab milk since you're out anyway. Just a mattress on the floor, the hum of an old fridge, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I didn't tell anyone where I'd moved. I changed my number, locked my credit, and made sure everything was in my name and my name only. My best friend Marcus helped me move. He was one of the few people who knew how bad it had really been. He offered to lend me money for furniture, but I told him I'd rather sleep on the floor for a while than owe anyone. That was the thing about growing up in a house like mine. You learn that even kindness comes with strings if it's from the wrong person. I didn't hear from my parents for 3 weeks. Then my mom called me from a different number. She left a voicemail. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. "Hey honey, just wanted to see how you're doing. Ashley misses you. We all do. Give us a call back." I didn't return it. A week later, another message. This time a little sharper. "We need to talk about the car insurance. It's still under our address, and it's affecting our rates. You need to be more responsible." That one I did respond to, with a screenshot confirming I'd already updated the address. Then came the guilt trip email. "You're tearing this family apart. I don't know what's gotten into you. We've done everything for you, and now you just vanish." Everything for me. Like charging me rent while paying for Ashley's vacations. Like letting my sister open accounts under my name and brushing it off. Like telling everyone at church that their independent son just wants to make it on his own, while calling me cold and ungrateful behind closed doors. I didn't reply. I dove into work instead. My manager at the tech firm started giving me more complex projects, and I ran with them. Long hours, yes, but every minute felt like an investment into a life that actually belonged to me. Then something unexpected happened. About 4 months into living on my own, I got a LinkedIn message from a recruiter. Some startup in Seattle had read one of the open source toolkits I'd published on GitHub. Said they were impressed. Wanted to fly me out. At first, I thought it was spam. But it wasn't. I did the interviews. The team was sharp, down to earth. The offer was double what I was making, with equity and relocation covered. I said yes. When I told Marcus, he practically shouted through the phone, "Bro, you really did it." I packed up again. Different energy this time. My mattress was now a full bed set. I had dishes that matched, a desk that didn't wobble, and a bank account that wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I felt legitimate. I flew out a week before my first day. My new apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the lake. I stood there my first night and thought about how none of it had come from handouts. Just grit, persistence, and the refusal to become what they said I was. About a month into the new job, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. Then came the text. "Hey, it's Ashley. Mom said you're in Seattle now. I know things are weird, but can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. Later that night, I opened up her Instagram. Her captions were still full of fake deep quotes about family first and trusting the journey. But the photo geotags told a different story. She was still living at home, still driving the SUV, still going out every weekend. But she had fewer comments now, fewer likes. One of her recent posts had a long rant in the comments from someone named Jill, saying Ashley had taken money for a collab and ghosted her. I don't know why I felt a flicker of pity. Maybe because for all the ways they'd propped her up, it was obvious now that the pedestal was cracking. The next weekend, I mailed my parents a letter. No drama, no rage, just a simple note. "I'm doing well. I hope you are too. Please don't contact me unless it's about something legal. I've made peace with the past, but I'm not coming back to it." I didn't sign it. I figured they knew who it was from. They never replied. And that silence? That was the loudest response they'd ever given me. Then, about 6 months after I moved to Seattle, I got an email from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My childhood neighbor, Mrs. Klein. Sweet lady. Used to bake cookies for me and Ashley when we were kids. She wrote, "Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I saw your company on the news last week, and I heard about what your parents did. It wasn't right. Just know some of us always saw who you really were." I cried for the first time in years. Not because I was sad, but because someone had finally seen me. Not the scapegoat. Not the independent one. Just me. And that was when I knew. This wasn't just a new chapter. It was a whole different book. Almost exactly a year after I left home, I flew back for the first time. Not for my parents. Not for Ashley. But for my friend Marcus's wedding. Seattle had become home in ways I didn't expect. I was doing well. Really well, actually. The startup had taken off faster than anticipated. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't worried about money anymore. I had structure, I had agency, and I was starting to actually like who I saw in the mirror. But landing back in my old town was a weird feeling. It was like time had paused there. Same streets, same gas station signs, same bakery that sold overpriced cupcakes. Marcus picked me up from the airport. We caught up over drive-through burgers like we used to back in high school. Eventually, as the conversation drifted, he looked over at me and said, "You know your parents have been telling people you ran off after some online scam, right?" I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yeah," he said, "that you quit your job, got in with some tech pyramid scheme, and moved out of shame." I couldn't help but laugh. Not out of humor, but disbelief. Even after everything, they couldn't admit the truth. That maybe they were wrong. That maybe pushing me out wasn't some act of tough love, but neglect dressed up as discipline. "What about Ashley?" I asked. "She's still living at home. Tried starting a YouTube channel last year. Tanked." He said it gently, like he was trying to gauge how much I wanted to hear. "Mom still brings you up sometimes," he added. "She misses you, man. Says you were like a second son." I appreciated it, but I also knew the difference between being loved and being tolerated. The next day, I suited up for the wedding. The venue was beautiful. Outdoors, little string lights, a live band, all that Pinterest-level stuff. I ran into a few old classmates, some of whom didn't even recognize me at first. Not because I'd changed physically, but because my energy had shifted. I wasn't hunched inward anymore. And then, while I was sipping on a soda at the open bar, I heard someone say my name. "Is that really you?" It was Ashley. She looked almost the same, flawless makeup, overly styled hair, the kind of dress you wear to be seen. But her expression flickered. First surprise, then caution. I nodded. "Hey." She walked up like we hadn't spent the last year pretending we were strangers. "I heard you moved," she said, like it was news. "Yeah," I replied. "Seattle." "What for?" I just smiled. "Work." She shifted awkwardly. "Mom and Dad miss you, you know." I didn't reply. Then she looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Why didn't you come back sooner?" And I said, without flinching, "Because I didn't owe anyone an explanation for saving my own life." Her face froze. I turned to leave, but paused. "You still using my name for credit cards?" I asked lightly. She stammered, "No, it was just one time." I didn't answer. I just walked away. The next week, I got a call from my old landlord. The house my parents rented, my childhood home, was being sold. The owner had passed away, and his kids didn't want to keep it. At first, I dismissed it. Too messy, too emotional. But something pulled me back. I asked the landlord to send me the sale details. Turns out, the house was undervalued. Needed some fixing up, sure, but it was in a good neighborhood and had solid bones. I bought it. In cash. Didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Instead, I went through the process quietly. Waited until the lease was up. Gave my parents 60 days notice through the property management company, under a new LLC I'd set up. Just business. 2 weeks later, my mom called. I didn't pick up. She called again. Then again. Finally, she left a voicemail. "Why are we being evicted? The new owner's name isn't even listed, just some company. Please, if you know anything, call me." I waited a few days, then mailed a letter. It said, "You once told me I needed to grow up and face the real world. I did. You're standing in it now." No signature. No return address. 3 weeks later, I flew back again. Just for a weekend. Drove to the house. Parked out front in a rental. Watched as movers packed up what looked like years of furniture into a U-Haul. My dad was yelling at someone over the phone. Ashley was sitting on the curb, looking stunned. My mom saw me through the window. Her face went pale. I didn't wave. Didn't get out. Just watched. They'd called me a burden. Said I wasn't ready. Told people I was weak, irresponsible, irrational. But in that moment, I realized something. I'd spent years trying to prove them wrong. Now I didn't have to. They were sitting in the proof. I turned the car around and drove off. I had dinner that night with Marcus and his wife. They asked if I felt better after seeing them. I said, "I don't feel anything at all." But that wasn't entirely true. I felt free. The house stood empty for 3 weeks before I stepped inside. It was a strange thing, unlocking the front door of a place I once thought I'd never leave, only to find it felt smaller, quieter, like the walls were holding their breath. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I flew in on a Thursday night, drove straight from the airport, and let myself in using the key I'd quietly kept all those years. It still fit, even though the locks had probably been changed a few times. I guess some things don't bother to shut you out because they never imagined you'd walk back in with purpose. It was eerie. The walls were still the same faded beige my mom loved. A few scuffs where a picture frame used to hang. A dent in the hallway where my dad once threw a remote. The bedroom doors had little nameplates. Mine had been scratched off. They'd turned it into a storage room. No surprise there. The air smelled of old furniture and cleaner. I walked through the kitchen, the same stove that once burned my fingers when I was 12. Same squeaky cabinet above the fridge where they used to hide the good snacks, the ones Ashley always got first. I found myself standing in the living room, staring at the spot where I used to sleep on the couch when they had guests and needed my room. My brother, Jason, would have friends over and I'd be expected to just deal with it. I remembered crying once after a night shift, quiet, so no one would hear. Ashley had laughed, called me dramatic. I remember my mom telling me to toughen up. I'd believed them for a long time, that I was the weak one, the oversensitive one. Now I was standing in their empty home, not because I was evicted or desperate, but because I owned it. I brought in a cleaning crew the next day, told them to strip it down. Paint, carpets, baseboards. Knew everything. I wasn't keeping this place as a shrine to my childhood. I was gutting it, rebuilding it. But not for me. See, a few months earlier, one of my coworkers, Monica, told me about her sister's nonprofit. They worked with single moms escaping abusive situations, helped with transitional housing, job placement, financial literacy. It stuck with me. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to claw your way out with no safety net. So I called her, told her I had a property, fully paid off, good condition. I wanted to donate it to the Organization for Transitional Housing. At first, she didn't believe me. She thought I meant donate money. No, I said, I mean the house. All of it. Silence. Then why? And I told her the truth. Because I grew up here thinking survival was the same as living. And I want someone else to unlearn that a little sooner than I did. They accepted. Of course they did. By the end of the month, it was signed over. I flew back out, stood one last time in the backyard, where my dad used to chain smoke and say things like, "Kids these days have no grit." And I laughed. Not loudly, just to myself. There was poetry in it. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the script. My mother. I heard what you did with the house. I don't know what to say. We didn't raise you to be this cold. You didn't even give us a chance to make things right. You think you've won, but all I see is someone who turned his back on family. I read it twice. Folded it neatly. Burned it in the sink. She was right about one thing, though. I didn't give them a chance. Because they'd had thousands of them, and they wasted every one. On silence. On favoritism. On calling me a burden while squeezing every drop of usefulness out of me. Letting them try again would have just given them another chance to rewrite the past. And I was done letting them edit my story. Around that time, Ashley messaged me. Instagram again. This time she said, "Saw the news. Can't believe you gave the house away. You've always had a flair for drama." I didn't reply, but I screenshotted it. Sent it to Marcus. He responded, "Imagine calling generosity drama." I laughed harder at that than I had in weeks. Seattle was different after that trip. Lighter. Like I'd finally cut the last frayed thread holding me to who I used to be. I started taking weekends off. Tried dating again. Got back into photography. Even joined a local hiking group. I stopped defining myself by what I had to prove. Instead, I started thinking about what I could create. Who I could help. What kind of legacy I wanted to leave behind. One night, I got a message from Monica. Just wanted to say, 2 moms moved into the house today. One's got a 5-year-old who hasn't had her own room in months. She cried when she saw the bed. Thought you should know. I cried too. Not out of sadness, but because I'd taken something painful and made it a shelter. A literal one. That house didn't belong to bitterness anymore. It belonged to healing. To women and kids who deserved to feel safe. And the people who once told me I wasn't enough? They were left out. Not out of spite, but because they didn't belong in the part of my life where love was finally unconditional. About 6 months after I signed the house over, I got invited to speak on a podcast. It wasn't anything big, just a local Seattle tech and founder spotlight thing. But the host, Drew, had a way of getting people to talk like they were catching up over coffee. The episode was supposed to be about startups, how I'd built something out of nothing. But somehow, the conversation drifted. We started talking about resilience, about growing up being underestimated. I shared pieces, not the whole thing, but enough to give it shape. About sleeping on floors, being told I was lazy while holding down 3 jobs, what it meant to finally have the power to walk away, and the peace not to burn everything down. The episode did modest numbers, a couple thousand listens. But a week later, I got an email from a woman named Kendra who said she used to go to church with my mom. Subject line: I just wanted to say thank you. She said she'd heard the podcast, said she knew my mom and dad, and how I was spoken about back then, that it always bothered her, how casually they joked about me being the slow one, the unambitious one. She ended it with this: hearing where you are now, it reminded me that people grow best when they're watered, not criticized. I hope they hear your story one day and actually listen. I stared at that line for a long time, because I think, deep down, a part of me had always wanted them to listen, to look at me, not as the failure they painted me to be, but as the kid they never took the time to understand. But I realized something even deeper. It didn't matter anymore. Their version of me, lazy, dramatic, soft, it was a fiction they needed to protect their own pride. They needed to believe I was the problem. Because if I wasn't, then maybe they were. And that wasn't a reality they wanted to sit with. But I no longer had to. That summer, I took a road trip with some friends. We went from Seattle down to California, stopping at national parks and tiny towns along the way. We'd sit by the fire at night talking about everything and nothing. And one night, I told them about the house. The real story. The floor sleeping, the favoritism, the final letter. They didn't try to pity me. They just listened. And one of them, Jordan, looked at me and said, "That house didn't make you. But damn if it didn't sharpen you." That line stuck with me. Because yeah, it did. Every little cut, every insult, every time I was told I wasn't enough, it turned me into someone who learned how to be enough for himself. Later that year, I got one last letter. This one was from my dad. Short, awkward, not his usual preachy tone. I heard what you did with the house. I don't agree with how you handled things, but I get it now. I do. Hope you're well. That was it. No apology. No ownership. But it wasn't silence either. And somehow, that made me feel like I'd already won. I never responded. Not because I hated him, but because I didn't need anything from him anymore. Not approval, not understanding, not even a sorry. Some people think revenge is loud, dramatic, explosive, but the most satisfying revenge I've ever felt was silence, peace, waking up in a place I paid for with my own name, doing work I believed in, surrounded by people who didn't just tolerate me, but chose me. There's this thing people say when they don't want to admit they were wrong. You changed. But I didn't. I just got free. The last time I saw my parents was a year and a half later, at my cousin Rachel's wedding. It was in Portland. I almost didn't go, but something in me said, show up. Not to prove anything, just to see. When I walked into the venue, I saw Ashley first. She froze, then looked away fast, pretending she didn't see me. That was fine. Then I saw my mom and dad at their table. They looked older, smaller somehow. My mom looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or run. My dad gave a slow nod. I nodded back. That was it. No drama. No fireworks. Just a quiet understanding that the boy they once underestimated now lived in a world they'd never built and could no longer reach. I spent most of that night laughing with friends, dancing, holding up champagne toasts. And when the music slowed and I stepped outside to get air, I realized something that I hadn't been able to say before. I forgave them, not because they asked, not because they deserved it, but because carrying their weight was no longer part of who I was. They said I was too soft. They said I'd never make it without them. But I did. And somewhere along the way, I learned that soft doesn't mean weak. Soft is what lets you bend without breaking. Soft is what lets you feel deeply enough to create, to love, to rebuild. Soft is what made me stronger than they ever were. So yeah, I bought the house they once thought I'd never afford. And I gave it away. Because that's what real power looks like. It's not revenge. It's not cruelty. It's walking into the fire they try to throw you into and turning it into warmth for someone else.